There is an island sitting in the middle of a body of water right now that should not exist. It was not there last year. It was not on any map before that. And in a matter of months, it will be completely gone again. No storm carried it away. No human being built it or removed it. It simply appeared out of nowhere, sat on the surface of the water like it owned the place, and then began to dissolve back into the sea as quietly as it had come. Scientists watched it happen in real time through satellite images, and even they were left searching for words that felt adequate enough to describe what they were seeing. But here is the part that makes this whole story so much harder to process. This was not the first time it happened. This island has been doing this since 1861. It rises. It lives. It disappears. And then, when everyone has moved on and accepted that it is gone, the ocean floor begins to stir again. The Caspian Sea is not the kind of place that typically captures the world's imagination. It sits between Europe and Asia, landlocked and ancient. Its water's a strange greenish blue that shifts depending on the season and the depth of the light. It is the largest inland body of water on the entire planet, stretching across more than 370,000 square kilometers, bordered by 5 countries: Russia, Kazakhstan, Turkmenistan, Iran, and Azerbaijan, and holding within it a geological history that most people never think about. But beneath that relatively calm surface, something has been quietly building pressure for longer than any living person has been alive. The floor of the Caspian is not still. It is not flat. It is a battlefield of tectonic forces that most of the world has never paid any attention to. But what can that be? The reason all of this matters comes down to a collision that has been happening for millions of years and shows no signs of stopping. The Arabian tectonic plate and the Eurasian tectonic plate are pressing against each other in this region with a slow, relentless force that most people will never feel, but that reshapes the planet in ways both dramatic and invisible. That collision creates something geologists call a convergence zone, and Azerbaijan sits directly on top of one of the most intense versions of this phenomenon anywhere on Earth. The pressure builds and builds underground, and it has to go somewhere. In this part of the world, it often goes up. Not in lava, not in the orange rivers of fire that most people picture when they think of volcanoes. Something far stranger than that. Azerbaijan holds one of the highest concentrations of mud volcanoes found anywhere on the entire planet. There are more than 300 of them, scattered across the mainland and the surrounding offshore waters, and they do not behave like anything most people were taught to picture in school. They do not erupt in fire. They do not spew red-hot lava down a mountainside. Instead, they release something far more unsettling in its quiet strangeness, a mixture of mud, sediment, and gas that is pushed upward from deep beneath the Earth's crust with enormous underground pressure. The result is a formation that looks almost geological in its calm, but contains within it a raw power that can reshape the surface of the sea without any warning at all. The specific volcano at the center of this story sits approximately 25 kilometers off the eastern coast of Azerbaijan, resting on a submerged feature known as Kumani Bank.
It is also called Chigil Deniz in some records, and it has been erupting on and off since scientists first documented it in 1861. The very first recorded appearance of the island it creates happened in May of that year. A stretch of muddy land pushed itself above the waterline, sat there for a period of months, and then sank back beneath the surface as if it had never existed.
Scientists of that era had no satellites, no real-time imaging, no way to watch the process unfold from above. They could only visit, observe, take notes, and then return later to find that their subject had vanished. That pattern repeated itself throughout the entire following century, with a regularity that is both impressive and quietly disturbing. According to available records, the island appeared and disappeared at least 6 separate times between 1900 and 2000 alone. Each appearance followed a similar arc. The volcano would erupt, the mud and sediment would break through the surface of the water, a new landmass would take shape above the waves, and then the ocean would slowly reclaim it. The material that makes up these kinds of mud volcano islands is loose, soft, and highly unstable. It has none of the hardness of basalt or granite that allows traditional volcanic islands to resist the constant battering of tides and storms. The sea dissolves it the way rain dissolves a sandcastle, patiently and without mercy, until nothing remains. What made the 2023 appearance so fascinating to the scientific community was not just the fact that the island came back, it was the way it came back. In November 2022, something shifted beneath the floor of the Caspian Sea in the region around Kumani Bank. The eruption that followed was significant enough to push a considerable quantity of mud and sediment to the surface. Satellite images captured by NASA's Landsat 8 and Landsat 9 satellites, specifically using an instrument called the Operational Land Imager, began showing something in the water that had not been there before. By early February 2023, the landmass was fully formed and measured approximately 400 meters across. That is roughly 4 full American football fields laid end to end, sitting on the surface of a sea built entirely from the inside of the Earth. The NASA Earth Observatory eventually selected an image of this island as their featured image of the day on January 10, 2025. By that point, the island had already begun its long decline back into the water. But the image brought global attention to something that had been unfolding largely out of public view, and it reignited a conversation in the scientific community that had been simmering for years. A geophysicist named Mark Tingey, described by those who follow his work as a genuine enthusiast of mud volcano behavior, had been among the first to flag the island's return. He noted with some astonishment that no official records of its appearance had been filed anywhere. The island had come back, sat on the surface of the Caspian Sea, and almost no one had noticed. The satellite images were the only witnesses. There is something almost philosophical about the way this island exists. It does not follow the rules that most people associate with land. You cannot build on it. You cannot claim it with a flag and expect that claim to hold. The moment you set foot on it, you are standing on material that is already in the process of being taken back by the water. Scientists who study these formations describe the composition as deeply unsuitable for anything resembling permanence. The mud that makes up the island contains high levels of natural gas.
When that gas ignites through the friction of colliding rocks during an eruption, it can produce towering columns of fire that shoot into the air hundreds of feet above the waterline. In 2021, an underwater mud volcano near Kumani Bank is believed to have triggered exactly this kind of dramatic event above the Caspian Sea, creating a flaming spectacle visible from a significant distance. The island that sat on the surface in 2023 did not produce fire in its emergence. It rose quietly, almost without fanfare, which is part of what made Tingy's observation so striking. The geological community had come to associate the appearance of these kinds of formations with obvious, detectable precursors. The 2023 event challenged that assumption in ways that researchers are still working to fully understand. The Caspian region is unusual in that its mud volcano activity is so dense and so varied that the standard models for predicting eruptions do not always apply cleanly. What works for the volcanoes of Hawaii or Iceland or the Pacific Ring of Fire does not necessarily translate to a landlocked sea sitting above a convergence zone with hundreds of underground vents scattered across its floor. The broader story of islands that rise and fall is not limited to Azerbaijan or the Caspian Sea. The planet has a long and quietly remarkable history of producing land that the ocean then refuses to keep. In the southern Pacific, a volcanic feature called Hunga produced an island in 2015 that sat above the waves for several years before being obliterated by the same volcano in a catastrophic eruption in January 2022. That eruption was so powerful, it registered as one of the most energetic volcanic events in recorded modern history, producing a tsunami that sent waves racing across the Pacific and generating a shockwave that circled the globe multiple times. The island the volcano had created was not just dissolved by that event. It was erased so completely that the seafloor around it was reshaped into something unrecognizable. Off the coast of Japan, in the waters near Iwo Jima, a similar but smaller scale event unfolded in 2023 when a violent underwater eruption produced a new landmass that was given the name Nijima, meaning New Island. It grew to a width of approximately 100 meters and a height of about 20 meters above sea level. Drone footage captured over the following months showed it beginning to shrink as the ocean worked against its edges. By early 2024, it was already retreating. These events share a common thread that goes beyond their geological mechanics. They expose something about the nature of the planet that sits in quiet contrast to the way most people experience the world on a daily basis. The ground beneath our feet, the land that we build cities on, the coastlines that we treat as permanent features of the map, none of it is as fixed as it feels. The Mediterranean Sea has its own version of this story, centered on a submerged volcanic structure known as Empedocles. This underwater volcano measures approximately 30 kilometers by 25 kilometers and rises to a height of around 400 meters from the seafloor. It sits off the southwestern coast of Sicily, and it has produced temporary islands on 4 separate recorded occasions throughout European history. Those appearances triggered territorial disputes between countries, mobilized fleets of scientific vessels, and left behind some of the most unusual entries in the cartographic record of the region.
The island that Empedocles produces has been called several names throughout history, most famously Ferdinandia, and even though it no longer sits above the waterline, it remains marked on modern nautical charts because its submerged summit sits close enough to the surface to pose a genuine hazard to large vessels. What unites all of these places and these events is a question that sits at the center of how we understand the planet we live on. We tend to think of the Earth as something that changes on timescales too long for any individual human life to perceive meaningfully. Mountains take millions of years to rise. Coastlines shift across centuries. Oceans advance and retreat over the span of ice ages that no person lives long enough to witness. And yet, here are islands that appear and disappear within months. Geological features that come into existence and vanish again within a human lifetime, sometimes within a single year.
The Kumani Bank Ghost Island, as it has come to be called in some corners of the scientific press, does not fit neatly into the slow-moving mental model that most people carry around about how the Earth behaves.
Scientists studying the long-term behavior of Kumani Bank and similar mud volcano formations are increasingly interested in what these events can tell us about conditions far deeper underground and potentially far beyond our planet.
The geological processes that produce mud volcanoes on Earth share certain characteristics with formations that have been observed on the surface of Mars. The same kind of underground pressure, the same mixture of gases and sediment, the same patterns of periodic release that create temporary surface features. Studying mud volcano behavior in the Caspian region gives researchers a window into dynamics that may be operating on other planets in ways that no current spacecraft has been able to observe directly. The ghost island of the Caspian Sea is not just a local curiosity. It is a data point in a much larger investigation into how geological systems behave across the solar system. Back in the waters off the coast of Azerbaijan, the satellite images tell the final part of the story with quiet efficiency. By December 2024, the landmass that had risen above the Caspian Sea in early 2023 had shrunk to almost nothing. The ocean had been working on it steadily for nearly 2 years, taking it apart piece by piece with the tireless patience of water against loose sediment. NASA's Earth Observatory described its retreat as resembling that of an apparition fading from view. By the time most people became aware that it had existed at all, thanks to the featured image in January 2025, it was already almost gone. There is something deeply human in that timing. The world looks up just in time to watch the last of something disappear. And yet, none of what has been described here is an ending. The Kumani Bank mud volcano does not stop building pressure just because the island it created has eroded away. The tectonic forces driving the Arabian and Eurasian plates together do not pause between events. The underground system of gas and sediment and geological tension that produced the island in 2022 and 2023 is still there, still pressurizing, still waiting for the conditions that will send another column of mud and sediment pushing upward through the water column toward the surface of the sea. Scientists monitoring the region cannot say with certainty when that will happen. They can say with considerable confidence that it will happen. Because it has happened before, over and over again, for more than 160 years of documented observation, and almost certainly for centuries before anyone was watching. The island will return. It always does. The only question is, what will be waiting for it when it does, and whether this time the world will be paying attention from the very beginning, rather than arriving just in time to watch it disappear.